I'm Pedram Navid, Head of Data Engineering and DevRel at Dagater. I've been a longtime user of dbt, and I've spent a lot of time talking to people in the community about the joys and pains of building data pipelines. And while dbt is a great tool that has really changed how we build SQL-based data pipelines, I've also seen some common pain points as teams grow and their data needs become more complex. There are three broad themes I'm going to touch on today before I hand it over to Sandy to show you some of the new features that Dagater offers: vendor lock-in, operational silos, and finally, difficulties handling sophisticated workloads. First, let's talk about vendor lock-in. Perhaps not an obvious topic, but over the past year, we've seen dbt adopt a less permissive licensing model, making certain features exclusively available to dbt cloud users. Now, while dbt core remains open source, many of the features required to make it usable, such as orchestration and deployment, as well as upcoming features like dbt server and metrics, they're all part of the cloud-only product. This increases a risk of vendor lock-in, and along with things like last year's price hikes and new limitations on their non-enterprise plans, such as a one project limit or 2 concurrent jobs, this has become a real concern within the community. The second issue we've heard a lot about is as teams build more complex pipelines and integrations, especially with the rise of things like AI and ML, they soon begin to realize that there's more to life than Jinja and SQL. Data teams are increasingly working cross-functionally with ML and ops teams, but dbt Cloud is essentially an operational silo. There's little to no understanding of the source data that feeds your models, and instead we rely on patchwork freshness tests, for example, to hope that upstream data just has been refreshed. Now, dbt does support using Snowpark or PySpark for Python models, but in doing so, there's now a tight coupling between your dbt models and your Python code. This makes it very difficult to run different workloads on different schedules. Local testing is also much harder, given that you need to use the Snowflake UI, for example, just to get error logs out when debugging. Beyond that, there's really just a minimal integration support in dbt Cloud. You're largely limited to webhooks and Slack notifications as specific jobs complete or error out. Anything more complex than that is really not well served within dbt Cloud. Last, and probably most importantly, dbt just isn't a full lifecycle tool for data engineers. Jinja only gets you so far, and things that appear simple on the surface become very cumbersome at scale. This is the most common and pressing concern when I talk to teams, and I really believe that data teams deserve better tools that support engineering best practices. And dbt has certainly given us a head start on that from where we were before. I think it's still not enough. For all the great aspects of SQL, and I love SQL, I defend it all the time, sometimes things are just better done in Python. Unit testing, for example, or if you have complex logic that you want to wrap around in a Python function, that's a very natural thing to do, and it's very easy to test. But you can't really test logic in SQL. All you can test is the output of these data transformations in a system. When it comes to things like observability or notifications, again, we're just limited to out-of-the-box alerts. There have been many times I've wanted to create a custom message based on failures, or even just send a Slack message when I get a freshness warning, but simple tasks like that aren't supported. Scheduling in dbt is limited to cron-style schedules, which results in teams creating these large buffers between successive tasks just to create the illusion of dependency. If you ever scheduled an integration at 1 a.m. and then ran your dbt models at 4 a.m., and then your operational tasks like notebooks and reverse ETL at 6 a.m., you know exactly what I mean. You just hope and pray that nothing takes longer than those periods, right? And while YAML itself is an excellent language for configuration, we've really started to overload it, and I don't think it's the best choice for expressing complex logic. Couple that with Jinja macros and the pain in debugging and testing these things, we often hear about teams hitting the ceiling very quickly in dbt as complexity and scale increases. These are just some of the challenges that we've aimed to help make more effortless with the release of our dbt integration. I'll now hand it over to Sandy to give us a walkthrough of some of the benefits of our integration that I'm sure you're all eager to hear about.